From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm Vasilios. That is Sean Fazende. Remember to like, subscribe, rate, and review. You can find us wherever you listen to and watch your podcast. And if you happen to be watching on YouTube, hit the little bell notification button. You get a notification every time we upload a new podcast. Sean, it is a disappointing Saints loss Monday. We have a lot to talk about.
Do we ever?
And I don't even know what to say about yesterday's poor showing, only putting up 9 points against the Buccaneers, led by Baker Mayfield. What are your initial thoughts about yesterday's game, my brother?
Well, my initial thoughts are pretty simple. Dennis Allen was exactly right when he led his press conference with, we got our blanks beat today. It was exactly right. It's exactly what happened. I've come on here the last couple of weeks on a Monday. I said it after week 1, said it after week 2, believed it after week 3. Week 1, the team that played the best won. Week 2, the team that played the best and deserved to win won. Week 3, the team that played the best and probably deserved to win didn't win, because I felt like the Saints outplayed Green Bay. Week 4, the team that deserved to lose lost. Tampa Bay beat down the Saints, beat up the Saints, beat them every which way in front of the home crowd. They're getting quite comfortable inside the Superdome because they seem to play very, very well here in New Orleans. Now, consider this. Consider this. The Saints were on the doorstep of 3-0. They were on the doorstep of 3-0 in Green Bay until about the 8.5-minute mark of that Green Bay game. In a span of 5 quarters, they've gone from the doorstep of undefeated, feeling really good, to 2-2. That is how quickly things change and can flip in the NFL. Worst effort to date came on Sunday, no doubt about it. The team, like I said before, they lost the game. They absolutely deserved to lose the game. They looked out of sorts. They looked discombobulated. They looked from the top down. They just did not look like a team that was completely in sync and completely ready to play. They just looked bad. They just did not look like a good football team. And it's unfortunate because this is a team that, the organization believes they can win with, and yet here you are in the NFC South with a very ugly loss to an NFC South opponent, and you fall to 2-2. So we're going to get into it. It's no secret what the problem is. We know that the defense played bad yesterday, but we know what the consistent theme has been for quite some time now. So we're going to get into it. But it's funny, you got one team up in Baton Rouge that can't stop anybody. You got one team here in New Orleans that can't score on anybody, and it's been just an interesting 180 when you go from your Saturday night watching LSU to your Sunday afternoon watching of the Saints. So it's been ugly, ugly, ugly. It was a bad weekend for local sports here, unless you're a Tulane fan.
That's true, and Garland did say yesterday he'd rather watch an absolute shootout like the one up in Baton Rouge that we saw on Saturday night than watch the garbage in the Superdome that went on local television yesterday.
Yes.
So offensive woes here. Like this is a terrible. Just I don't even know how else to put it. Like I told you guys this yesterday. I crunched the numbers. If you take away the Rashid Shaheed punt return touchdown last week against the Green Bay Packers, the Saints offensively, points per game, 13.75. That is their worst mark since 2007, where they started 0-4. This team has, since 2021, had 5 games where they haven't scored a touchdown. In the 6 years from 2015 to 2020, there was only 6 of those games. And then Jeff Duncan put it best yesterday. The Saints have more turnovers this season than they do touchdowns. So, where do you go with this? We were so hyped coming out of the preseason. And after the first couple of games, we're like, yeah, there's some growing pains here and there, but it still looks like they're building to something great. Where is your head at right now?
Okay, so great lead in there because I obviously have thought a lot about this and watched most of the game over again at the time of this taping. You have like I said before, even in the games that they've won, it just feels like a sort of a scattered group of individual players, no real cohesion, no real identity, no real rhyme or reason, just sort of this kind of mashup of this group of guys that just kind of on this ship that just right now they seem to be going in a circle. They don't seem to know what they don't know, or I don't know. I don't know. But look, here's the thing. The messaging has certainly changed now. I mean, it went from time on task, we're getting there, glass half full, to we got a problem. So that's a good thing that there's a sense of self-awareness. The worst thing they could have possibly done after the game yesterday was say, we just got to keep going. We got to keep going. We got to keep going. No. 4 weeks of this has been a problem. It's been a problem even in victories that you had. You know there's a problem. They have acknowledged the problem. You said it. You heard it from Dennis Allen. You heard it from Derek Carr. You heard it from players inside the locker room. There is no more time. There is no more time left. There must be a significant breakthrough with this offense very, very, very soon. And when I say very soon, probably would help if you start next week or Sunday against New England. If there is not a significant breakthrough, they can talk on the outside to the public, to us, about we're not going there yet, we're not going there yet. But we know if there's not a significant change, it's going to be too strong to overcome. They're going to have to make a significant change, and that significant change is going to come at offensive coordinator.
Yep. We were all anticipating a change kind of in the offseason. And but then they kind of surprised us by saying, nah, Pete's coming back. They
felt like with a quarterback like Derek Carr, it would be a little more of what he's used to, a little more of what he's used to, accustomed to doing when it comes to calling plays. But look, the Saints believe they can win with this offense. Big. They believe they can win with a quarterback like Derek Carr, receivers like Thomas, Olave, Shaheed, Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill, an offensive line that played better, that has struggled, but that certainly has played better. They're not, like last year, I think at some point they kind of understood we are who we are, and we're just going to ride the season out.
Yep.
They don't want to do that this year. They can't punt on the season. And if right now there isn't a significant breakthrough in the offense, very soon, I don't see how, even if you don't necessarily fire Pete Carmichael, maybe you just do the whole thing where you take away play calling duties and you let someone else do the play calling duties. But I could see that certainly happening if there isn't a significant change. If not this week, by the Houston game in a couple of weeks, because you can't roll the ball out next week and score 16 points again.
No,
you have to. I mean, first off, you got to get a win, but you can't roll the ball out and get and score less than 20 points. Not what you've invested in this offense. And there's a lot there. There's a lot there from down in to down out, and I never want to put it on one guy, because it's not one guy, because there are some execution issues. But there are some things happening, we'll get to a little bit later, that I think tangible things that could be quick fixes that could certainly help this, just the rhythm, and just make it a little smoother. It just feels so difficult right now. Things just make it a little smoother down in and down, that I think would help everyone involved and give yourself a best chance to be successful on every play.
This offense is looking like it looks like it hasn't changed much, even with the quarterback swap. This looks like the offense that Andy Dalton ran last season.
Yeah, and honestly,
except they have Michael Thomas back.
And now you're on. And look, this is why. Look, we've got a ton of questions. And Final Word feature on the Final Play app. Leave some comments below if you want to get involved in the discussion. We love it. 90% of them are at Pete Carmichael. So I'm not one I don't do the pile-on thing. I don't do it. I try to go back and watch and see, okay, I'm not just going to say, well, there needs to be better play calling. I think there needs to be, I'd like to give at least a reason as to why.
Yep.
And one of the things I'm looking at when I watch, the Saints are, this is a former head coach. This was a staple of his offense. It is they go into a game with more personnel groupings than maybe any other team in the NFL. I mean, it's upwards of 40 to 50 personnel groupings in a game. If you really want to get down into the technical details of personnel groupings, you can still have a multiple complex offense and cut those groupings in half. It just feels like they're running plays with certain groupings that they don't mesh well. They don't fit well. You'll see tonight on a film study what I'm talking about with, a play on the first drive. they run that little trick play where they hand it off, Taysom takes a snap, hands it to Derek Carr, who hands it to, who kind of flips it to Alvin Kamara. And they lose 7 yards because they have a receiver in blocking down on a linebacker that doesn't block. He's like 5'9", Bowden.
Yep.
Like, symmetry is what I'm talking about. Like, there is no reason to not have Keith Kirkwood in the game at that point because he's your best blocking wide receiver. Or if you don't have, I know Jawan Johnson was out, so if you don't have a tight end, you can use a bigger body right there that can execute that block. Even if it doesn't get any yards, you don't lose yards. That blew the whole drive. They could have got it. They could have been in line for a touchdown there, and they ended up having to settle for a field goal right out of the gate, which was probably their best drive of the game in the first quarter. So those are just the little things. I'm sure they're looking at a lot more technical things they can do, but big picture, for instance, we've all talked about you saw it where Derek Carr eludes the pass rush. It's a nice job, flips it out to Adam Prentice, and he drops it.
Yep.
It's 3rd and 9. Alvin Kamara is not on the field. Like, personnel-wise, that you're not giving yourself a chance there.
No, and it goes back to what was like Kamara's first. I'm not saying Kamara didn't do anything yesterday. The man caught like 15 passes.
Oh yeah.
But the fact that you relayed the information to the defense about what you were going to do by having Prentice in the backfield at all, the defense knew you were going to pass. So why even mix it up?
But here's the other thing. It's, you're worried about the blitz there. Okay. But, in that exact situation, if it's Kamara on the sideline, he might score a touchdown. And it's Prentice and he doesn't make the catch. And then you want to blame Prentice, sure, but he doesn't catch ad-lib throws like that from a quarterback. It's just not what he does. So those are just the things I'm talking about, where those are things you can look at, and you can look at this offense and say, you know what? I know we did it this way for 15 years with Drew Brees, but maybe there are some subtleties we can do from just a pure mechanical standpoint that can help, that could still give our offense an advantage, but also help with the flow a little bit. And that was just the one thing that jumped out to me. You can still do a lot of personnel groupings, but you don't need that many, because I just think sometimes you get caught in a situation where it's 3rd and 9, you have Prentice in the backfield and Alvin Kamara on the bench. To me, that just doesn't fly. So that's where I'm at with it. So all that to say this. The urgency is clear. The messaging is clear. It has to get better. It has to get better in a hurry. And DA knows he can't ride this out if it stays like this. There's going to have to be significant change.
Now, we spent, and not just us, but a lot of folks spent last week saying, could Carr play? They never stopped to ask themselves if he should play. Should he have played, Sean?
All right. Another great topic here, because that's going to be the storyline for a few days. It was certainly a storyline leading up to the effort that we saw on Sunday. So from a purely health standpoint, I don't think he was 100%. I think everyone could see that. I really felt like there were 2 throws that really stood out. The early throw to Michael Thomas behind him looked like it was just the accuracy was off, and it clearly was. And then obviously we all saw the Chris Olave throw up the sideline where he intentionally underthrew him, but he underthrew him too much. And Chris Olave, even Deuce said, probably got to slow up a little bit in that scenario because it's a cover 2 whole shot throw. But to me, the injury didn't necessarily dictate the average performance. To me, it was the lack of practice reps. I think that was the thing that showed up so obvious when you watch the game. Early in the game, they wanted to get the ball out quick, and I understand that you want to offset a quick pass rush. But there were times in the game where his timing is just off. Either he is way too quick to check it down, or he's holding on to it way too long. And you can tell there were certain plays that were called in that game. He didn't get a chance to rep out in practice. No. You could tell.
Yeah.
So and he kind of slipped it in when we asked him about his injury, because he knew that was going to be the big headline. He said, I don't want the shoulder to be an excuse. He kind of slipped in. I don't know if it was that or just not practicing as much.
Yeah.
But he said he didn't need practice. I think that was a miscalculation.
Overestimated how in tune with the offense he was.
Yeah,
maybe.
And look, here's the thing. I understand there's going to be a faction of the fan base that felt like, Jameis Winston could have played. I
feel bad for Jameis.
Look, I don't know if it's a different outcome with the way that whole offense, the way the whole thing just kind of came together. It just felt really clunky. And then he gets in the game, and then he took the reps all week, gets in the game, and of course he throws the interception. And I know some people are gonna, criticize him for that. But the way that game was going, that was certainly bound. An interception was bound to happen. It just happened to be that Jameis threw it. I can't say that game is different if Jameis starts. Maybe they give him a little bit better chance to win. I don't know. I do know this. The guy they believe in said he could go. They trusted his guy, and it didn't happen. Let me also say this, because a big picture macro thing. So we've already established week 1 wasn't perfect, but they played well enough to win.
Yep.
Week 2 wasn't perfect, played well enough to win. Week 3 wasn't perfect, but played well enough to win. Probably win that game if Carr stays healthy.
Lost momentum.
Week 4 was the only game where
they got outplayed.
Outplayed. What's the one thing different between week 1, 2, and 3 and week 4? The practice routine was screwed up in week 4.
Yep.
Like Carr didn't practice throughout the week. So that's why, to me, you can talk about health and shoulder and was he stubborn, was this, was that. To me, it was about the practice reps. He didn't get them. And this week, he definitely needs to get them, because you're going up against New England. You're going up against a team with Belichick. The game plan's well. I know they're struggling right now as well. But this offense has to play well, and they have to win. So I think Derek Carr, from a practice rep standpoint, that was probably the thing that stood out the most. And I'll just say this. Hopefully, I said before, there's a silver lining, and that was the offensive line played better. His sense of timing has been off the last 2 games. It all boils down to he's not in sync with his offensive line, because obviously he's gotten hit so much, the cumulative effect of that. Hopefully they cleared the hurdle with that this week. If that's a silver lining, and all of a sudden he can now trust his offensive line a little bit better, to where he's not so quick to come off his main guy and get to the check down or hold it too long, whatever the case may be. The clock in his head is all off right now. Hopefully, when they watch film, they will see that, and they can now move on with a little more of a trust between quarterback and offensive line.
And, I mean, they should have a challenge ahead of them for a Bill Belichick defense this coming week that did just lose their star pass rusher, and Matthew Judon with a...
Is he out?
I believe he tore a muscle or something in his upper body, so I think he might be out. But I wanted to get to some fan questions, and boy, have we gotten a lot.
We got a lot. We picked a couple out, but we've got a ton. My goodness.
An absolute ton. We have no shortage for the next several days. And so this one is from Chico in New Orleans. Why are we holding on to Pete Carmichael? He should have gotten fired when Drew Brees retired. The game has passed him by, obviously.
All right, look. So 90% of our questions are around that. And look, this is he's in the spotlight now, Carmichael. He's under fire right now. He's the guy right now that's the most obvious that they're pointing to, because this is the third quarterback who has now struggled. You had Jameis, you had Andy, now you had Derek Carr. This is now the third quarterback with Pete Carmichael calling the plays that just does not seem to be all the way in sync with where a play caller and quarterback should be. So, what is the viewer's name? I'm sorry,
Chico.
So to Chico, I'll just say, they're not there yet, but if it doesn't change quickly, that could happen, and the calls are only going to come harder and come quicker and louder if they go out Sunday against New England and it's another bumpy performance on the offensive end.
Do you think if they put up another stinker on offense, do you think they're actually going to make a move, or do you think that's something they're going to have to stew over?
They'll probably stew over it, because it's Carmichael. He's been there a long time. They generally don't do that, but if they fall to 2-3, and the reason why is because they played on offense, the conversation is going to have to be had at that point.
All right, and here we have another question around the offense. George and Metairie need to cut Derek Carr. Definitely a bust. That is a hot take if I have ever seen one.
All right. I'm actually glad they sent this in, because this is the disconnect. This is the divide. This is the clear. How do I say it? This is the clear, it's two different realities. Outside the building, if a quarterback doesn't play well, everyone's first instinct is to say, cut the quarterback, or move on from the quarterback, or bench the quarterback. Look, he played. That was his worst performance of the season. Let's be honest. That was his worst performance. He was average at best, at absolute best. I might be being kind, okay? And I've already gone through the reasons why I think he just looks a little hesitant right now. But when the organization goes out of their way to recruit, try to trade for, and eventually sign a guy 4 years, $140, $150 million, whatever it is. They're not pulling the plug after 4 games. It's not going to happen. They're not going to do it. Now, look, that guy may end up being right. It may end up being a total wash of Derek Carr here in New Orleans. But if you're an organization, you're not pulling the plug after 4 games. And there's still, I go back to this. If they were 3-0 heading into this game and it's 3-1, I think it's a little easier to take. But the fact they're 2-2 and he got injured, it complicates things. I think he can play better. I know he can play better. He knows obviously he can play better. And I think, there needs to be some urgency with him. And I think he really needs to look closely at what he's doing because, like I said, his eyes are all over the place. It's like his eyes are in the wrong spot. They're moving too quick sometimes, too slow sometimes. But organizationally, when you make that kind of commitment to a player, you just don't rip it up after 4 games just because he had a rough start. And like I said, they're 2-2. So I think what would you say the overall experience of Carr has been to the first 4 games? I mean, if you just add it all up and average it out.
I mean, it's just he's been average.
I would probably give it like a B minus, C plus.
Probably right around B minus, C plus. I haven't been inspired, but I also haven't been entirely let down.
Right, exactly. It's been a little bit of kind of a middle of the pack type feel. No, they want more.
Exactly what we said Carr was.
They want more than that. No, they want more than that because they believe he can be more than that.
Sure.
With this team, with these weapons, and with this offense. So he's got to get better. But the organization is going to give him every opportunity, especially this year, to work through issues and get better. Because as much as the sky is falling today, it is only week 4. It is only October 2nd. So there is still a lot of football left to be played.
In terms of the Carr signing, I mean, football is all about practicing, detail-oriented stuff, and you can chalk it up to risk-taking, too. You got to take risks in football to succeed. Nobody's succeeded in football by just making the safe play every time, you know what I mean? So the front office, if things don't work out with Carr, can chalk it up to a poor decision, but it's the amount of poor decisions that stack up that start to
and at some point, an organization reaches that point with every player and coach, but they're not there yet after 4 games, guys. Come on, they're not there yet after 4 games. I mean, at least give them a chance to break out of a slump. I think is probably where the organization is at because they feel differently about Derek Carr than they did about Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston. That's just the facts. I know some people don't like that, but that's just the facts. That's where the organization is with Derek Carr.
Any final thoughts before you head out to Saints camp today, Sean?
Yeah, as bad as it seems, as bad as it is or feels, they are 2-2. They're only a game back at the NFC South, so I don't want to ruin everybody's week this week by just saying.
I think everybody's week is ruined already.
I think everybody understands it, and I'm not here to be glass half full, glass half empty guy, but I do think it's a new week, and generally that Monday after a bad loss it feels like forever. Tuesday gets a little better, and by Wednesday, once the practice for the next week starts, then things feel okay. Put it behind you and move on. It's a very, very, very winnable game in New England this week, and hopefully they can get the job done.
All right, so thank you everybody who sent in the questions. Please keep sending us more. You can submit those on the Final Word feature on the Final Play app, and we'll even take some out of the comment section if you're watching on YouTube. For Sean Fazende, I'm Vasilios. Remember to like, subscribe, rate, and review. We'll catch you guys on the next episode of the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast.